Juliet, you can help me with admitting participants, please.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we have a good number. So far we are 15, and we can start as the rest keep joining us so that we don't take too much of your time. So members of Nature Kenya, thank you very much for creating time to join our talk. My name is Gloria Waswa, and I work for Nature Kenya as the Membership and Marketing Manager. Today, this talk is organized by the Mammal Committee of Nature Kenya. So I will just allow them to take the lead and go ahead to introduce the speaker and just moderate us through the talk. So I'll hand over this to Leo Kasoha. Leo, please take the floor.
All right, thank you. Welcome everyone. Today we are excited that we have John Kabue, who will be talking to us about the gentle giants of Tsavo, and if indeed they are on the trend of extinction. So Kabue has been working in Tsavo for the last a few months, and he has been collecting data on these giraffes just to establish what's going on, like the trend with these giraffes. So today we are excited to have him here talk to us about the Masai giraffe and their population and land use trends in the Tsavo landscape. So Kabue, thank you so much for accepting to talk to us. So karibu sana, even as you talk to us.
Okay, thank you so much, Leo, for this great opportunity. So my name again is John Kabue from the University of Nairobi. I've been working on the Masai giraffe in the Tsavo landscape for the last about 2 years or so. And I'm very excited to be here today doing this talk and sharing with you what we've been able to do down there and our findings from my study. So my study was about Masai giraffe, population and land use trends in the Tsavo landscape, which was part of my MSc work, down there at Tsavo. So I think we can go straight away into our today's talk. Okay, so the giraffe inhabits the arid and semi-arid savanna south of the Sahara in Africa. And the IUCN categorizes giraffe into 9 giraffe subspecies based on the color patterns in their coats. And also these color patterns vary in different geographical locations. So Kenya as a country are very lucky because out of the 9 subspecies, giraffe subspecies, we have 3 which are found in Kenya. If you look at the map here, we can see that 3 different types of giraffe are found around Kenya, which are the reticulated giraffe, which is at the northern part of Kenya. Then we have the Masai giraffe or Tiposkechi, which is found in the southern Kenya all the way to Tanzania. Then we have the very small population, if you look at the map, of the pink colored region, which is around the central Kenya regions, where we have the Rothschild giraffe. So between 1985 and 2005, the global giraffe population declined from about 150,000 to 98,000 individuals, representing a 40% decrease in the total giraffe population. So this decline has mainly been attributed to habitat degradation and fragmentation due to land use land cover change, climate change and variability, poaching, and increased human population. So it is interesting to note that giraffe no longer exist in some countries such as Mali, Eritrea, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and Senegal. Even in countries where giraffe currently exist, the habitat is diminishing in very high rates. So giraffe have belonged to Giraffidae family has two genera, which is the Okapi and the Giraffe. So the Okapi are found in the dense rainforests of Congo, which are the closest relatives of giraffe. The giraffe, again, on the other hand, are found in the savannas of Africa. So the giraffe body morphology, giraffe is the tallest mammal and among the heaviest mammals, terrestrial mammals in Africa. It can reach to heights of about 5.5 meters and to weights of about 1.9 tons. So giraffe have a very interesting behavior because they exhibit fusion and fusion kind of social association, where they form very temporary units of association with more consistent units being between calves and their mothers, and also peers of the same age. So the rest of the other giraffes, they don't have very strong social bonds. They come together at times and again disperse. So giraffe movements are mainly influenced by forage and water availability among different seasons. So giraffe population, like all the other or most mammals, is influenced by mortality, natality, immigration, and immigration. So land use, land cover, and human population are among the major things that have caused differences or changes in giraffe populations. So there have been limited studies on the impact of land use and land cover changes on giraffe population in the Tsavo landscape. So on the conservation status of giraffe, the overall species categorization by IUCN is vulnerable. The species has been categorized as vulnerable. But the Masai giraffe and reticulated giraffe, which are found in Kenya, are listed as endangered by the IUCN. The Kordofan and the Nubian giraffe, which are found in Central and the northern parts of Eastern Africa, are categorized as critically endangered. So the CITES Conference of Party meeting in 2019 placed the giraffe in Appendix 2, which means that this species is not really threatened with extinction, but its trade has been controlled to avoid overutilization that would threaten its survival. So this picture shows us the closest relatives of the giraffe, which is the Okapi, which is, as I said, is found in the dense forests of Congo, which is the closest relative. But at a closer look, they may look very different, but at a closer look, you realize that they have ossicons, which are horns which are covered by skin. They also have lobed canine teeth and a prehensile tongue. So my study targeted the Masai giraffe in the Tsavo landscape. So the Tsavo landscape is a huge conservation complex that has private ranches, national parks, conservancies, and even farms. So though the Tsavo landscape harbors one of the highest populations of the endangered Masai giraffe, there has been very limited studies in the Tsavo landscape that focused on giraffe population and land use, land cover change. So the main objectives of my study was to determine the population distribution and land use, land cover trends of the giraffe in the Tsavo landscape. My main objectives were to assess the past and current distribution of giraffe in the Tsavo landscape, to analyze land use, land cover change from the 1980s to date in the Tsavo landscape, and to determine how land use, land cover changes and other factors influence the distribution of the giraffe population. So my main research questions were, how do the past and current giraffe numbers and distribution compare between different regions in the Tsavo landscape? Again, how has land use, land cover changed in the Tsavo landscape since how has land use and land cover changed in the Tsavo landscape since the 1980s to date? And how are giraffe population and distribution affected by land use, land cover change in the Tsavo landscape? So it is interesting also to note that the Masai Giraffe range has reduced by about 4.7% between 2016 and 2019, with only 59% of the population occupying protected areas. So the rest of the giraffe population has been observed to be inhabiting the non-protected areas, to be inhabiting conservancies, ranches, and so on. So, and we should also note that most of this giraffe range has reduced because of land use, land cover changes, which are mainly driven by anthropogenic activities. So this is a photo of a herd of Masai giraffe in the Savo West National Park. So my methodology. So first we defined the study area, which as I had said before, is the Savo landscape. So it's worth noting that Savo landscape has a huge history, which dates back to the pre-colonial era. So Savo was a very popular trade route, especially because of the booming ivory trade in the coastal Kenya by Arab merchants. So there were very many popular trade routes along the Savo landscape. So presently, the Savo landscape is the largest conservation complex in Kenya, which covers about 43,000 kilometers squared and covers about 5 counties, which is Tana River County, Kitui County, parts of Taita Taveta and Kajiado counties. So we have a number of communities that live or within the Savo landscape, which are the Kamba community, the Masai community, the Ormo, the Taita, and the Wata. So all of these communities have different socioeconomic activities, which have different impacts on the wildlife and the landscape. So there are 2 main rivers in the Savo landscape, which is the River Galana and Savo River. And it's worth noting also that Savo has one of the highest diversities of species, and also I think the highest population of elephants is found in Savo. So my study was designed to cover 5 regions within the Savo landscape, which was Savo West National Park, Savo East National Park, Rombo Group Ranch, South Kitui National Reserve, and Taita Ranches. Each of the areas was surveyed 3 times, and GIS and remote sensing tools were used in collecting and analyzing land use, land cover change data in the Savo landscape. So for data collection, for giraffe population, current giraffe population was collected through road transect counts. We used 51 transects covering a distance of 1,574 kilometers. So during the data collection process, whenever I sighted a giraffe, data was collected on the angle and distance of the giraffe from the vehicle. So the giraffe was also sexed and aged, and the number of giraffe were also counted in case the giraffes were in a herd. So this data was then modeled using distance software to estimate the population and density of giraffe in the whole landscape. So past giraffe data was obtained from previous aerial censuses, reports from DSRS and KWS. So for the other part of the study, which covered mainly land use, land cover change, satellite images for the years 1985, 1999, 2010, and 2020 were downloaded. Then they were classified using supervised classification using QGIS software. So out of, after the whole analysis, the main land use, land cover types were divided into 9 classes, mainly forests, woodlands, acacia woodland, closed bushland, comifera thicket, then bare land with scattered trees, grassland, perennial shrubs, settlement, agriculture, and water. So after all this data was collected, it was sorted using Microsoft Excel, and all statistical analysis were conducted using the R software. So Kruskal-Wallis test was used to analyze the difference in giraffe densities and numbers among the different regions in the landscape. Giraffe sex, age structure, composition, seasonal distribution, and land use, land cover change were tested using chi-square goodness of fit tests. And trends in giraffe population over time, as well as impact of water availability on giraffe distribution, were tested using regression analysis. For all the statistical tests, an alpha of less than or equal to 0.05 was considered significant for all calculations. So this is a map of my study area, including the transects that we used. Yes, so these transects cover the main parts, which is South Kitui National Reserve, which is at the topmost part of my study area. Then this other part is Tsavo East National Park. Then we have Tsavo West National Park and the Taita Ranches down here. So my results were as follows. So giraffe population in the different regions within the Tsavo landscape was seen to vary considerably, with the national park, Tsavo West and Tsavo East, having the highest number of giraffes, followed in by Taita Ranches, then finally the Rombo Group Ranch. So South Kitui National Reserve, we had no giraffe sightings. So for the densities, unlike the population, Rombo Group Ranch had the highest density of giraffe, followed in by Tsavo West National Park, then Tsavo East National Park, and finally the Taita Ranches. So for giraffe population, age, and sex structure, we realized that the age structure in giraffe populations in the different regions varied considerably, where we had adult females having the highest population, followed in by adult males, then adult unsexed, and some adult females all the way. So for giraffe male to female sex ratio, we realized it also varied considerably or significantly, with the highest population of giraffe being mainly female. But for Rombo Ranch, it is interesting to note that we had an almost equal population of males and females. So the overall giraffe population trends over the years since the 1970s to date, we realized that there was a general decline in giraffe populations. Though between 2014 and 2017, there was a slight increase in giraffe population, the overall giraffe population trend has been declining over the years. So we also checked the impact of seasons on giraffe distribution. So we realized that there was a significant difference in the distribution of giraffe in certain areas between different seasons. So for example, in Tsavo West National Park and Tsavo East National Park, we had very high giraffe numbers during the wet season, while we had considerably lower numbers during the dry season, which was the opposite for the non-protected areas, which was Rombo Group Ranch and the Taita Ranches. During the dry seasons in the non-protected areas, we had higher giraffe numbers. So we could see that giraffes were moving from the national parks or the protected areas during dry season to look for water during the wet seasons. So for land use, land cover change in the Tsavo landscape, we were able to generate land use, land cover maps, which showed how the landscape has been changing over time. For example, if we compare the 1985 map and the 2020 map,
John, sorry to interrupt you.
Hello.
Yeah, I think you are losing you. I don't know if it's only me who's losing you, but I think your network is a bit shaky. So there are some bits that we are losing.
So let me try to sort that out in a minute. But I hope you can get me now.
Yeah, right now I can hear you very well.
Okay. And I think we can proceed. So we can see that land use, land cover in the Tsavo landscape has changed considerably also. If we compare the 1985 map, land use, land cover map, and the 2020 land use, land cover map, we see that there has been huge changes, especially in agriculture and settlement. If we look at areas around Tsavo East, at the eastern side, or at the western side of Savo-East, northwestern side, you can see that there has been increased activity in farming and settlements as opposed to earlier maps. So our analysis showed that forests, acacia woodland, closed bush and commiphora thickets and woodlands have been decreasing over time. So the highest decrease in, for example, acacia woodland was between 1999 and 2010. So on the other hand, we realized that human-induced land cover types were increasing over time. For example, agriculture, settlement, and bare land. So we also did much more narrow analysis because the Savo landscape is quite huge. So we did a more detailed analysis for Rombo Group Ranch, which is within the Savo landscape. And we also realized an almost similar trend where over the years, human-induced land use, land cover types were increasing at the expense of the traditional land use, land cover types. So this is a photo of an irrigated agriculture in Rombo Group Ranch. So these are some of the areas which were traditionally very good giraffe habitat, but are increasingly becoming farmlands. So for our discussion, conclusion, and recommendations, so we realized that higher giraffe numbers in protected areas were mainly attributed to habitat degradation in unprotected areas. So this forcing the giraffes to move back to protected areas. We also realized that seasons affected giraffe movement, where we find that during the wet seasons, giraffe stayed in protected areas, national parks, while during the dry seasons, giraffe dispersed largely and moved to dry areas. So we also realized that giraffe movement was also influenced by availability of forage and water, and also seasons. So the study also realized that there was consistent decline in giraffe populations since the 1970s to date. Giraffe population in the Savo landscape was female skewed with 1:1.63 male to female sex ratio. So this meant that we have a higher female population. And this was mainly attributed to the fact that poachers would ordinarily prefer hunting down male giraffes because they were bigger and they could yield more meat. So land use, land cover change analysis revealed that agriculture, bare land, grasslands, and settlements increased considerably at the expense of forests, woodlands, and shrublands in both Rombo and the entire Savo. So decline in giraffe populations in the Savo landscape since the 1980s to date corresponds to land use, land cover change in the area during the same period. And rampant land use, land cover changes decreasing the suitability of non-protected is okay. So the rampant land use, land cover change has decreased the suitability of non-protected areas as viable giraffe corridors and dispersal areas. So for our conclusions, we concluded that land use, land cover change driven by agriculture, mining, fencing, settlement, charcoal burning, poaching, overgrazing, and land subdivision outside protected areas is increasing rapidly in the Savo landscape. So, and this is greatly compromising the non-protected areas as viable giraffe dispersal areas. So Savo West National Park and Savo East National Parks are critical in maintaining giraffe populations, but cannot support the giraffe populations independently. And thus they need to preserve the non-protected areas as effective giraffe dispersal areas and giraffe corridors. So we also realized that no giraffe sightings were made in South Kitui National Park. And this was attributed mainly to habitat destruction through charcoal burning and also intensive grazing. So we also realized that there were very high giraffe densities in Rombo Group Ranch, despite very high poaching incidences and very high landscape conversion into farming and agriculture and settlement. So actually there is need for more research to understand why giraffe preferred this area, yet there was a lot of human-induced activity. So overall, giraffe decline was linked to poaching and land use land cover change. So the study recommended that further studies be done to determine the extent to evaluate the connectivity of the landscape and establish corridors within the Tsavo landscape. There's also need to do more studies to extend the research to Mkomazi National Reserve, which is in Tanzania, National Park, which is in Tanzania, to see the effect of the transboundary effect of both Tsavo and Mkomazi, which are in different countries. So there's also need to understand the impact of and the effects of climate change on giraffe distribution in the Tsavo landscape, and the impact of human-wildlife conflict on giraffe populations. There's also need to replicate this study to other areas where giraffe are facing land use land cover changes. So for management, the recommendations that our study had was to promote ecotourism as an alternative income-generating activity, as opposed to human activities that have an impact on giraffe populations and giraffe habitat. So also to facilitate formation of conservancies in community areas and in private ranches to secure wildlife corridors and also dispersal areas. So there is also need to establish a multi-agency transboundary collaboration to establish transboundary collaboration to curb poaching incidences, because we realized that giraffe poaching was occurring in Kenya, and the proceeds of these activities crossed the border, and it was a bit of a challenge to track the perpetrators of this activity. So there is need for the both sides of Kenya and Tanzania to collaborate in dealing with giraffe poaching. So there was also need for management to build the capacity of local ranches on the modern methods of livestock production that do not compromise wildlife conservation. So these are photos that I took from the field, which show, like the first photo here shows a carcass of a poached giraffe in Rombo Group Ranch. And the second photo here shows a charcoal kiln in Rombo Group Ranch. And this third photo shows camels grazing in South Kitui National Reserve. So I would want very much to acknowledge different partners and stakeholders who have been part of this journey and this process. Yes, mostly the African Wildlife Foundation and the entire fraternity for supporting this project, and also the University of Nairobi. So thank you.